Hello and welcome to the Hunnitap channel. This is my original music channel where I release all of my music, but I also do live performances, I review guitars, and in today's video I want to give advice to beginning guitarists on how to pick your first amp. It is an important decision, and I will claim you can avoid some important pitfalls, but also make some inexpensive choices. There's really going to be two amplifiers that I specifically recommend at the end of this video. I purchased them both with my own money, and I'm very happy with them, but I think it comes down to one that I would recommend very much, and another one if you're thinking about performing out. So I hope you will enjoy this, get something out of it, and leave a comment down in the comment section. Also give it a thumbs up if you like it. I hope to see you on the live streams where we can get to know each other better. All right, let's get right into it. So the importance of a good amp is the first thing I want to focus on. When you have a good amp, you like the sound of what's coming out of an amplifier. It really sets the tone of your practice sessions, in my opinion. You want to have something that sounds good to your ear. Even if you're just practicing patterns or chords or whatever, if it sounds good, it is good. That's an old musical saying that I really stand by. So make sure it sounds good to your ear. And we're going to talk about how I recommend you doing that, and it's not just by listening to it on videos like this, because you really can't tell from a video like this. There's so many factors that come into play when you're listening to an amplifier. It just needs to sound good to you, is what I would say. And that sound will impact your overall playing experience. You want to remove anything in your path to playing guitar that is an obstacle, that makes it inconvenient, makes it unpleasant, in my opinion. It's going to hurt to learn how to play guitar to start with. Your fingers are going to be tender. It's going to take a little while before it doesn't hurt your fingers to play. So you need to just be ready to experience that. But outside of that, it should be pretty enjoyable. Even the act of, say, playing patterns or building finger strength can be almost meditative in its effect, I would claim. So I would encourage everybody to explore an interest in guitars, especially when you can get a guitar for so little money now compared to what you used to years ago, some of the more expensive brands. And if you're interested in that kind of thing, you can check out other videos on the channel. I particularly like the Jet guitars in terms of their playability and price for beginners. But just know I'm not sponsored by anybody or anything. So when I say things like that, I mean because I have purchased two Jet guitars and I love them both. That's where I'm coming from. That being said, I will provide an affiliate link down in the description where you can get some on Amazon. If you're interested, those are affiliate links. I mean, if you click on it, that gives you a link to the products on Amazon, but then a part of the sale comes back to me, like $1 or something, but it doesn't cost you anything extra. Okay, so your overall playing experience is definitely going to be heavily impacted by your amplifier, and that's going to influence your musical journey. Now, there may be certain types of music that you're most interested in learning first, or that you're most interested in emulating or reproducing in original music in the future, which is really my love, is original music, the creation of original music. So you want to get an amplifier that allows you to do that. The amplifiers I show today will allow you to run straight into your computer. They serve as what's called an audio interface, meaning you can plug it, you can usually from a USB-C connector into your amplifier and be able to pick that up in, say, Audacity, which is a free program, or a digital audio workstation, a DAW, they call it, a DAW, where you can record music. And that's a whole other area of super fun activities to do if you're interested in such things. So what are the key features to consider when you're thinking about getting your first amplifier? First of all, I would claim power output. The right wattage of amplifier, in other words, enough sound that if you want to turn up the volume a little bit, it's loud enough, but not, in my opinion, so much sound that you're going to irritate and alienate everybody in your living space against you, because let's be honest, who wants to hear endless guitar noodling? Even if you're great, who wants to hear that much? Like, think about if Eddie Van Halen lived in your house. At what point would you be like, bro, give it a break? You know, it's 10:30 at night. So, you know, that's something to consider. You want your guitar journey to be good for you, and you also want people not to start harshing your practicing journey because they can hear it all the time. So you really, I think, want something that has headphone capability, and the amplifiers I'll show today do, so that you can play with the headphones on. And The amplifiers I like in this beginner kind of range are the same ones that I actually use to record with. So I think now in the current age of guitar electronics, you can get something very, very good for not that much money. And the power output really isn't that important. One of the amplifiers I'll show you is a 10-watt amplifier. The other one is a 100-watt, and the final one that is more advanced is a 150-watt. All under $500 price range. Tone controls can also be important. Now, tone is affected by a number of things. It's affected by, I will claim, the wood in the guitar. That's controversial for some, but I think just common sense for most, that affects the vibration of the instrument, which translates to the string vibration, which translates to what the pickups pick up. However, in addition, the pickups themselves are going to make I think, a much bigger difference than the tone would overall on the tone. You will have a tone knob on the guitar typically. Back in the 80s, we got rid of the tone knob and we just went straight in for maximum tone, but most guitars you'll get will have tone knobs to control between treble and bass in the signal. And then also the amplifier, typically you want something that has a low, mid, and treble control so you can dial it in. But even more importantly than that, now in today's amplifiers, I think, are all the electronics that come along with it and things that you can do in terms of emulating amps and speaker cabs. Or you could just go right into the rabbit hole of complexity with tone. I consider myself somewhat of a tone focused person, and I have to be careful not to go too far down the tone rabbit hole. So I'll end up spending 2-3 hours just tweaking and fine tuning things, when really for most people it sounds great, and it just becomes your own kind of trip to focus on it too much. So tone controls, use them to shape your sound. Also, connectivity options. We mentioned the headphone jack. That's really important. You want to also know that you can run that headphone jack into, say, a mixer board or into another speaker, typically from the headphone jack, and understand that you'll have that 3.5 jack and that larger jack depending on the amplifier, and you can get converters depending on which headphones you have. I use very inexpensive studio speakers. The most important thing to me, honestly, is that these are very inexpensive headphones that I got off Amazon. I'll leave a link in the description, but they work great, they sound great, and my thing is big padded ear covers as the most important thing. And then thirdly, the ability to run it directly into your computer for recording, I think, is a fun option if you want to record some of your guitar, and the ability for the amplifier to serve as its own audio interface. In other words, to run it from the amplifier via a USB typically right into your computer. Otherwise, you'll have to get a audio interface to attach to your computer, and those typically aren't that expensive. I would recommend the Zoom L8 mixer as the best audio interface to get personally. That's what I use in all my live streams. That's what you're listening to this through, and it even has effects you can put on the vocals, which you might hear a little of that on my audio output. But I think that's a nice convenient thing, and you want to consider that. All right, now let's talk about types of amplifiers, and there really are 3 types of amplifiers which we should consider. One is the solid state, and that's the most affordable category. It's also, in my opinion, the most reliable, breaks the least. That's been my experience, and the most versatile. So solid state amplifier is going to typically, the ones I'm going to recommend to you are going to typically have modeling capability. In other words, different types of sounds, like a wide variety of effects already built into the amplifier. I think that's kind of cool. You're probably going to want to get into pedals if you stick with guitar for a while and really dive into that layer of guitar fun. I certainly have and enjoy that, but most of the amplifiers that you'll get now in the solid state range will have some amount of effects that come with them, and I think that's kind of cool. Expect that you'll need to have a phone, a tablet, a computer to interface with an amplifier. You may actually need to update the firmware on it. You may need to do a bunch of things like that, but that's just a short-term experience. Once you get past that stuff, then you are off and running, and I think it's amazing how many options. And I'm going to tell you after I go through all 3 of these which one I would recommend for the beginner. The other one is tube amplifiers. You might hear a lot of seasoned guitar players talk about the advantages and the sound and the uniqueness of tubes in an amplifier. And these are actual tubes that plug into the amplifier and do not last forever, need to be changed at some point, but produce a sound unlike other amplifiers. They are renowned as being the top type of sound by guitarists typically. And I found that tube amplifiers are much more expensive, certainly, than solid state amplifiers. They do sound better, but to get the real sound of the tubes, you really have to kind of turn it up. So tube amplifiers is something, for me, you're going to get the benefit and the sound of it turning it up in a live setting. At that point, there really probably is nothing that would beat that sound. And the reason is because it's so warm, it's got a very rich tone to it, and you can get that very authentic, classic feel to the tone. Now, the third kind, which I already touched on with the solid state, are modeling amplifiers. And that is not just the solid state amplifiers, which can have modeling in them, but also just purely modeling amplifiers that are 100% software. In other words, you plug into an audio interface. Again, you buy that external audio interface like a Focusrite, let's say, or a Zoom L8 or some kind of audio interface. You plug into that. That's the interface into the USB in your computer. And then you run it into a DAW software that you then put your modeling amplifier into typically, and that allows you to have access to typically a large range of tones and amplifiers. So some people really like that. That's a good option if you want to go 100% computer. And that may be attractive because not every space is going to be conducive for having potentially large amplifiers. But the ones I recommend at the end of the video are rather small. And to me, that's important. Also, the weight. Think of the weight of the amplifier. If you're going to be carrying this around, and the size of the amplifier, if you're going to be putting it somewhere, it's got to fit. And also think of where you're going to put it, that it's high enough that you can hear it. You know, if you don't want the amplifier probably down on the floor pointing at your feet. Most of these amplifiers will have one single speaker, and it's very directional. So you probably want it up where you can hear it, or at least angled. So think of these things. If it's in your computer and you have a couple of good speakers, like I use the Yamaha H5 speakers, which are great studio monitor speakers. I'll put a link in the description of those as well. That's what I use. I found them to be fantastic. They sound great, and I think they sound really better than most amplifiers with the plugins that go through. So it's all a matter of taste. The main thing is to find the sound that works for you after actually listening to it. So trying it out and before you make the purchase, I think, is probably the most important thing. Now, out of all three types of amplifiers, I would choose a solid state modeling amp. That's my choice. In fact, that's what I use, and we'll talk about some at the end of the video. Now let's talk about budget and value, where we balance the quality of the thing against the affordability of the thing. And you know, if you're just getting into guitar, you might not know if you want to stick with it. I hope you do, because it's been a beautiful part of my life. But you might not, and therefore you don't want to invest a ton of money in something that will be a short-term thing. And you want to have something you can sell if you're not interested in it. But let's be honest, you're not going to get back what you put into it. In fact, it may be very, very hard to sell it for anything like what you bought it for. And the simple reason is the market is absolutely awash in instruments. I think I read at one point that Fender had like 100,000 guitars in their factory that they had to store because they've made so many guitars. There is just a glut of guitars on the used market and new guitars being made every day, and that means that the value of your guitar you just bought is really not going to be worth much. If you take it to a pawn shop, expect to get 1/4 of what you paid for it at best, for example. Good news is now you can get a lot of quality for not much money, and that consistently blows my mind that that's the case, because I grew up with Marshall amplifiers and full stack amplifiers, and they were very expensive and very heavy, very complicated, and now you can get something that I think sounds almost as good for a fraction of that. If you decide that you're going to stick with the guitar playing thing and you're going to maybe join a band and you're going to do, well, then you have different considerations. You may want to consider something much larger, much louder, and then it's really important to go listen to it in a guitar store. I always recommend going to Guitar Center. That's been a place that I love to go. I just love the community of musicians that are there as well, even though the instruments are sometimes kind of scratched up. I think that's a great place to go, and I think it's important to go there. and listen, and go to other music stores, your local music store, and listen and support those stores, because they're the only place you're going to be able to do this. If they weren't around, then you just kind of have to wing it, order something offline. I hope it goes well. Listen to guys like me, and I hope we have the same taste. So that's definitely much more of an investment. If you're looking at, say, getting something like a Fender Twin Reverb or a Marshall tube amplifier, you're talking way over $1,000, way over it. And those will be amplifiers typically that will last you for a long time and sound fantastic. But just understand, my opinion, better to get something lower scale. To start, compare the features on amplifiers as much as you can. It depends on what feature set is important to you. For me, I like that the out-of-the-box tone is good, that I don't have to do a lot of fiddling with it to get the sound that I like. So if I have to go in and configure and tweak and it's on it, I'm already sort of over it, because I just want to be able to really just kind of turn it on and it to sound good. Maybe switch between some settings, make some minor tweaks, but I like to have an amplifier that has knobs on it that I can tweak manually. Even though it may be software controllable as well, I like to have the knobs. And I also like the default setting set to be good. On some of these amplifiers, you can change the defaults to be what you want, and there's just so many options, like the amps I'll show you here in just a second, that it won't be that big of a deal what it sounds like initially, but find out what's important to you and then choose based on that. And then the last thing I'll cover is finding the right fit. Consider what your musical style is what I really want to say here. Are you into heavy metal, country, folk, jazz? Find the amplifier that allows you to play that type of music. You should have something that I claim has at least a good clean sound, something that's clean and also has maybe some reverb or a little bit of echo capability on it to produce a nice clean sound, but then also have something that has something more of an overdriven sound. So those are the two states obviously I would focus on. Something with overdrive for heavier stuff, solos or perhaps heavier music, and something with a more clean sound. And some amps even have more or less of an acoustic guitar emulation sort of sound in them. And if that's important to you, then that's what you should definitely get. If you're playing through an acoustic guitar and you just want to amplify that, that's its own whole area of amplifiers that you want to check out. So that would steer you in a different direction than the electric guitar amp, certainly. Again, visit the music stores. Plug in and play. Don't be embarrassed. I know it's very intimidating to be in music stores, especially as a beginner. You kind of feel like you're being judged. And bear in mind, guitarists are very judgmental, in my opinion. I found them to be extremely judgmental. But you're going to have to overcome that and just simply be willing to make some noise. Just make some sounds. Figure out a few chords you can strum that allow you to hear what you want to hear, play a few note sequences that allow you to hear the tone enough. You don't need to go in there and be a virtuoso of guitar to test an amplifier. It just needs to sound generally good to your ear, playing a few things you may learn before you go into the store. But to me, that's how you find the right fit. Learn just enough to be able to test a tone, then go get that amplifier. Of course, visit your local stores and read as many online reviews as you can, compare amp models, but realize much of that stuff is just personal opinion. It's like, do you like chocolate cake? I hate chocolate cake. Oh, okay. The other person loves chocolate cake just because they love chocolate cake. So a lot of amplifier discussions are like that. And in fact, a lot of amplifier discussions are something like pure opinion or somebody's bad experience because they were confused about hooking their phone to the amplifier. That's a lot of it. Or they had background noise. You see that on a lot of these amplifier reviews, as the amp has a hiss to it, and that kind of thing. It's like, well, that's from the pickups typically, or from some sort of electronic interference. And the amps I'm about to highlight here, I read in the reviews all the time. Not a lot, but there are always a few that give like 1-star reviews, and they say it has a hiss. I couldn't get rid of the hiss. It has a background noise, or this kind of thing, or it sounded thin, or concepts like that. And it's probably because they're using a single coil pickup and they're getting that 60 cycle hum, which is, those are noisy pickups. And if you put overdrive on a signal, you're going to get a hiss. You're going to get a hum, a background interference signal. I mean, that's just part of the way it sounds. Honestly, I'd say sort of get over it if you're going to be using single coil pickups, or get a noise gate which can filter that out. But big deal. The other thing is, if you look around this room, I've got electronics everywhere, and it creates kind of an electronic storm of sorts, a lot of interference. And there can be also, the power that you're bringing into your amplifier can be quote unquote dirty. One of the things you can use to reduce that is to get a power cleaner. I use a Furman rack mounted power unit to run all my power through to reduce noise. Even then I get some noise. Another thing you can do is shield your guitars. I have a number of videos where I show how to shield guitars. That can reduce some of the interference, but you're never going to reduce all the interference, because you cannot create a Faraday cage, that is an insulated space, and still have an electric guitar which works. So just kind of get comfortable with a little bit of noisiness, but typically through a noise gate, you can deal with that. All right, now let's talk about my recommendations for amplifiers. The first amp that I recommend for beginners, without any hesitation, is an amp that I have purchased myself, and actually it comes with many amplifier models, and that's the Spark Mini. Many emulated amps in here. It's all able to be hooked up through your phone. It has incredible amount of features. This is a 10-watt amplifier. It actually has a speaker on the bottom, if you can see that. It sounds fantastic, and in fact, it makes a great USB speaker, I claim. It allows you to control Bluetooth backing tracks from your phone, and can control the volume there. So you can play along with music from your phone, or learn songs playing with them from your phone, which is incredible, like from YouTube, in my opinion. And then you can also control the volume of the guitar separately, so you can really tweak it in. The other thing is, it comes with 4 presets, in addition to the hundreds of amp simulators that are available through the Positive Grid software and website that you can download onto this thing. And it's small, it's lightweight. Sometimes I go play this, I drive to a local park, and I'll go play this and stream music from my phone, and just play out. And it's so light, I can just put it in the basket of my bike. I live not far from the beach, and I have these beach parks. Put it in the basket of my bike, put one of these guitars in a backpack carrier guitar case, and away I go. So light. The other thing is, I have back issues. I injured my back surfing years ago, so having an expensive amplifier is really expensive, and heavy amplifier is really unrealistic for me to lug that thing around. I end up getting to the place I'm going to play, and my back is injured again, re-injured. So it really is a factor. And if you look on the back of this, it's got everything I mentioned. It's got a nice 3.5 jack for a headphone. Now I can run this directly into my soundboard. So I actually when I play my live streams, which I hope you'll go check out on Hunnitap channel and subscribe, I run it from this headphone jack straight into the soundboard. The other thing is, it has this auxiliary in, meaning if you have a separate device, you can run it into here and use this as the speaker. Incredible. The third thing is, it has this USB input. That means that you can run it straight from this amplifier into your computer, like I had talked about, and it's an audio interface. And then the other 2 buttons are just to pair the Bluetooth and turn on the power. But for me, this is the choice. In fact, this is my choice of exactly what I use. So I would recommend it to you, because I bought it, and in fact, I plan to buy another one. They have Steve Vai model, which has Steve Vai's sort of tones. So I'll probably get another one, believe it or not. Why would you do that? Well, just because I love it so much. Now, the other amplifier that I would recommend is the Boss Katana series. Those are decent amplifiers. My criticism of those would be, and I've got 2 Boss Katana MK2 100 watt amplifiers, and I can run those in stereo. Those even get stereo effects, which sounds really, really good. They're very inexpensive. You can get them for about $250 now. They're very loud, and they sound great for the price. So, that would be my other choice. They are much heavier, but in terms of solid state amplifiers, I'd say those are great. And they also come with a whole bevy of Boss effects. You can, on both the Spark Positive Grid Mini and the Boss Katana MK2 100, you can also attach foot pedals to control the effects. They all come with many, many effects that you can configure. So really, you can't go wrong with those two options. And also, the Boss Katana comes in a 50-watt version, which is a little lighter, also very good, and a 100-watt version. Both you can run stereo like that. A lot of videos on my channel about those amplifiers. But I really like the MK. I really like the Spark Mini more for all the reasons I mentioned. It's lighter, and I think it sounds better, honestly. Now, the third option, let's change camera perspectives. Third option is this thing behind me, if you can see it on the table. That's the Spark Live 150. And that thing is a PA and an amplifier. And I've never quite encountered a amplifier like that, in that it has 4 inputs that you can use it as a PA. The amplifier sounds are incredible. So you can plug a microphone. You can plug a guitar into that with the amplifier. The microphone thing, you can even put vocal effects on and have 2 more inputs. That means you could have like a keyboardist, I don't know, what do you call them? Piano player, and a bassist. So you really have enough to do a small performance like in a park or a small, like a coffee shop or that kind of thing, all in that one. Now that one's a little more. That's about $450, a little bit more advanced, but that's 150 watts. So the options that I've given you here are this little 10-watt Spark Mini, the 50-watt MK2 Boss amplifier, the 100-watt version of it, and that Spark 150. Now there's lots of other amplifiers to choose from. If you're looking at tube amplifiers, perhaps consider Fender tube amplifiers. They have just amazing classic sounding amps. Marshall has always been very good. And of course, there are many other high-end brands that you can get into that will run you anywhere from $1,000 up to $10,000. So depending on how much scratch you have to put in the game, you might choose to get something different. So I hope this video was useful to you. And if you like it, you will subscribe and leave a comment down in the comments. And I hope to see you back. I hope to see you on one of the live streams soon. Thanks for watching the Hunnitap channel. Hope you have a great day and enjoy learning how to play the guitar.